It's beautifully detailed. Can I open the door in flight? I can. Now I'm probably going to crash. There we go. So in summary, hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today, something a little bit different. On one of our last streams, I decided to treat myself and waste a huge amount of money on this Carenado Mooney Ovation on the in-game Microsoft Store. I thought I'd save you guys the trouble of knowing if it's a waste of money or not, and doing a quick review on said aircraft. Now, in summary, my short opinion of it is no, I don't think this is a waste of money. It's actually a very nice aircraft. It's got the usual amount of detail that you'd expect from a Carenado add-on, and it's great in its own way. Of course, the first thing you might think is the closest standard aircraft to this really is the Beechcraft Bonanza, and how it fares against that, and whether or not it's actually different enough to justify paying the amount on it. While I'm on that subject, this can be had on the store for £24.99, so £25 roughly, which is equivalent to about $32.50, or somewhere in the region of 27.7 euros, 27 euros 70, something like that, on the store. So it's not a small amount of money by any means. So what exactly are you getting for your money? Well, of course, you're getting a hell of an amount of detail. Now, I'd probably say that this is more detail than you'd get on the stock aircraft that you get with the standard flight sim. Model outside, obviously what you'd come to expect from anything in flight sim really. Great reflections, great detail. A couple of colour schemes you can get on this as well. I've just gone with one of the standard ones, but there's about 4 others you can choose from, varying colours. Internally, if I just zoom out a little bit here, when you first get this, there's actually on the yoke here, and you can click it to toggle it, a little iPad or EFB to adjust elements on the outside. So if I go ahead and flick some of these on, you can see the level of detail. You can already see some flags have appeared in the air cooling baffles, the air cooling covers that it puts on the engine. Stick maybe external power on, tow bar on. We've got pilot and co-pilot, which goes ties in with the loading that we've got at the moment, I believe. No, actually, we don't have a passenger, so I could turn the visual element of the passenger off. Oh no, it's already off. Turn that one on. And it doesn't work. Interesting. Oh, hang on, what's it say underneath? These items only work if the plane is stopped on them. Oh no, that's for these parts. Okay, unusual. So that doesn't seem to make a difference right now. But never mind. We've actually got the doors as well. And then on the next page, you've got some configurations to apply to the aircraft, so that you can actually just fast forward to any part, or even just go straight back to cold and dark to do the whole thing yourself, which is the state we're in at the moment. This is cold and dark. So I'll leave that page, I'll go back to the other one, and we've actually got some opening doors, which, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think any of the stock aircraft actually do have opening doors. So you can click it here, or you can click it on the iPad. Handle goes up, door comes open, and then we've got a little hatch at the back there for your baggage, which you can open. I'll do it on here, and that flicks open there, and again you've got it on the external elements. And while I'm out here, we've now got chocks in place on all of the wheels, the main gear, external power at the back, and some little tow bar at the front here as well. And then of course, as part of it, we've got some air cooling covers here for the intakes to the baffles that cool the engine, and then you've got a pitot cover here as well, which is part of those elements that you can enable on the EFB on the iPad inside the aircraft. I think that's it. I don't see any tie downs or any... No, there's no gust locks. Presumably it's got its own gust lock system already, so there's nothing else on the external model than that. I mean, you've got a remove before flight tag there, but that applies to these two covers as far as I can make out. Right, so well, how does this compare to the Beechcraft Bonanza? So they are very similar on paper in some ways. First of all, the Bonanza, certainly the model in Flight Sim, has 4 passenger seats in the back, so it can seat a total of 6 people. This one only has 2 in the back, so it's only seating 4 in total. It's got a small baggage space. Something I should add to this as well, the real world Bonanza does have 3 or 4 different configurations you can have, so you can actually get a 4-seat in total variant with a larger cargo hold at the back, but the one we've got in Flight Sim is the 4 in the back and 2 seats obviously in the front, which doesn't change. You can even see the screen on the tablet there. That's fantastic. They both have very similar engines, although the strangely the Ovation has got a slightly larger capacity. It's a 550 cubic inch Continental 6-cylinder engine, whereas the Bonanza has a 520 cubic inch 6-cylinder Continental engine. Both fuel injected, non-turbocharged. But interestingly, despite the larger displacement, the Bonanza has the power advantage. It's got 285 horsepower, whereas this one only has a meager 280. But I think that doesn't really matter, considering this is quite a bit lighter than the Beechcraft Bonanza. So, in the flight sim world, well, according to their POHs, or pilot operating handbooks for each aircraft, which I have meticulously read, you've actually got a maximum takeoff on the Bonanza of about 3,600 pounds, which in metric land is about 1.64 tons, 1,640 kilograms. Whereas the Mooney is in the region of 1.5 ton maximum takeoff, 1,530 kilos, or 3,360 pounds. So that's a whole lot lighter. It's 240 pounds lighter for the maximum takeoff weight. Probably something to do with those 4 seats in the back, but also then the empty weights that Flight Sim uses on both these aircraft are even further apart. So the Bonanza's 2,600 pounds, whereas the Ovation is 2,290, so it's 310 pounds lighter, empty. So subsequently, if you have the same amount of fuel on both and two passengers, or rather 2 people on board, the pilot and someone in the right seat, I'm not sure why they refer to them as a co-pilot in the light aircraft configuration, but just a passenger in the front right seat, or an instructor of course, they are quite far apart. So the Bonanza's about 3,180 and the Mooney is 2,870. So again, just over 300 pounds lighter, 310 pounds lighter for the same configuration. So it's that much lighter, and it's got 5 horsepower less. Well, basically it's still going to outperform the Bonanza, and based on the testing that I'm going to show you in a bit, where I basically compare the two in exactly the same conditions with exactly the same loading, you'll see the Ovation has really got the edge. So in my opinion, in short, if you want a summary now, this is much quicker than the Bonanza, and it cruises faster as well. One thing I love about it though is, compared to the Bonanza, we've got these beautiful analog gauges, and to be quite honest with you, I'm more of a fan of these. These are better for training as well, and if you are a real world pilot like myself, you can use some of this stuff to help you with things like commercial training, if that's where you're going through at the moment, or even just building you up into the life of a complex aircraft. So we've had a fiddle with this. Let's get rid of these static elements, and we'll have a look at everything else, and I'll shut the doors. Now, I'm going to treat this as I would a something in real world like a Piper Arrow, which are very common complex aircraft. Now, being that it's a fuel injected engine, it's got quite a lot of similarities, but the startup procedure is slightly different to what you'd expect on an Arrow. Usually on an Arrow, if you have the mixture fuel and mixture full rather, and fuel pressure in, it's going to be throwing fuel in. So when we come to start the engine, we actually start an Arrow engine with the mixture cut off. In this aircraft, according to the POH, you crank the engine with a fuel pump on and the mixture fully rich. So I've got to make sure that I don't wince too much when I do that, because in my head I'm imagining that it's just throwing all this fuel into the engine and flooding it before you've even had a chance to start it. So what else have we got inside first of all? Well, we've got the back seats in here, as I say, 2 of them. Some strange discovery was that, as well as this, you've interestingly got your Hobbs meter, which measures your airframe out, on the rear bulkhead, which is interesting, or parcel shelf I suppose you could call that. Usually they're somewhere on the instrument panel here, but there's probably not enough space for it or something like that. Resetting my view here. We've got our usual 6-pack of instruments, some radio navigation instruments, and a nice, fantastic, large-screened Garmin 530, which is a slightly inflated version of the 430 that a lot of aircraft come equipped with in GA world. So you've got a moving map there, and you've also got your radios incorporated in it. Then you've got a second radio, comms and nav as well. Both of them have that feature. Autopilot control panel down here. ADF, I believe that one is. Oh, sorry, that's the DME. And your transponder. Not sure where our ADF is actually. Oh, it's just tucked under here. There's your ADF. So it's got all the radio navigation equipment you could want, really. Nice array of engine gauges at the top there, which is a bit of an unusual location. Normally they sit at the bottom, certainly on all the aircraft I'm used to flying, be that Cessnas and Pipers, things like that. And an annunciator panel, if I could get my words out, in the middle there, which alerts you to anything that's abnormal or potentially even normal, depending on the colour of the light. And that's attached to a master caution light here. Timer over here. Something to do with fuel flow and a couple of other things here. I think this might be one of these fuel flow computers and stuff, so you can actually run certain calculations on it. And of course, in the Carenado fashion, it's all fully modelled. I think there's only a few switches which aren't, which is the oxygen panel here, but interestingly, you can turn oxygen on and off here anyway. This works, which, I mean, that's me sold, to be honest with you. I'd buy it just on that alone. I'll shut that again because it gets loud. In fact, we'll leave it open when we start the thing because it does sound wonderful. Vent, not really sure about that. I'm guessing that will be some sort of air vent up here, possibly for the spine along the top that has some airflow through it, possibly to feed some air to the rear seats as well. And you've actually got your lights up here. Now, something I discovered on these when I was using this aircraft in the live stream is these do not seem to be backlit. So if you are in the dark, it's very hard to spot them, so you might need to use your patented Microsoft Flight Simulator flashlight to illuminate it so you can actually see what you're pressing. Also, do not open above 132 knots. If you haven't watched the live stream, I advise you follow that piece of advice because I did not, and yeah, it is modelled. So something happens, obviously in flight sim fashion, it just goes, screen goes dark and it says you've crashed, but probably avoid doing that. So, well, that's pretty much it inside. It's like I say, really fantastic detail, well-modelled aircraft. Keep an eye on your fuel tank selectors here. You can only have left or right, or of course off. So as you're flying, just like a lot of Piper aircraft, which I'm dying to see one in flight sim, to be honest with you, you will actually have to time your tank usage, and we tend to stick to about half an hour aside, and then flick it between left and right tanks as you're cruising along. I think that's about it. It is a great model. Everything pretty much works. So we've got our trim indications here, elevator and then rudder, and this is your flap indicator here. It is an analog indication, so it will actually display even with the power off. I initially thought it might be a bar of LEDs like some aircraft, but actually no, it is just a analog slidey line that goes up and down based on your configuration. So let's get this switched on and see what we can do. Let's get some noise in so we can hear it starting up. Battery master's over here, alternator, and then this is your radio master. Now usually you leave those off for engine start so they don't surge and or damage the aircraft avionics. All these gauges are lit up. As you can see, you've got analog and a digital representation of it, but interestingly some of these actually just have a scale that goes from one to the other, so you can't really see what it is during anywhere in between, but of course you've got the digital readout underneath. Right, let's put some altitude on there. Looks like the pressure's wrong here, it should be about 50 feet. We are in beautiful Inverness, by the way, so I'm just going to press B and cheap. Obviously you can arrange it here as well. Still want to see millibars. They're probably just using this as Flight Sim doesn't seem to acknowledge that there is any other unit than inches of mercury yet, but when they do I hope we can get to see this in a millibars or hectopascals unit as well. Right, so power's on, let's get some lights on. Beacon probably go on, stick the nav lights on, nothing else because they're all too bright. And we can have a look at that on the outside actually. Beacon is sat underneath the tail, or underneath the midsection rather, and you've got your nav lights on the wingtips. And any nav lights on the back? No, actually, so your rear nav lights are sat on the wingtips as well, which is common to quite a few aircraft. Others tend to have the white nav lights sat on the centre of the rudder. Right, so that's there. Now the starter procedure, we're going to check our fuel throttle fuel throttle. Check our throttle here, full and free. The prop has to be fully in the fully fine condition all the way forward. And then we are going to leave the mixture where it is. Everything is where it needs to be. Not sure actually, talking about it, elevator trim. I mean, obviously it's probably in the real aircraft, it's to turn on and off the elevator trim electrical switch on the yokes, but I've got an analog trimmer on my yoke, on my controls, so whether or not this is on or off, it still works. So, bit of a useless switch, that, to be honest. So what happens now is the boost pump goes on. We should see a fuel pressure rise if we have a fuel pressure gauge anywhere. Doesn't look like we do, actually. No fuel pressure gauge that I can see. So we're just going to stick the boost pump on. The light comes on here. There's no fuel flow indicated, but I suppose this would be one suggestion of whether or not it's like the Arrow. If you put the fuel mixture fully rich, you'd see a fuel flow appear. So potentially this has got some safeguarding in place that you can't flood the engine. Just turn the idle cut off again. Fuel tank quantities are there as well. So lights are on. Obviously we'll look around, make sure it's all clear as you would in the real world, and mixture fully rich, and crank the engine. He says as it zooms in. There we go, and now we've got a fuel flow registering. There's the 6-cylinder growl. Oil pressure should be coming up. There's our oil pressure gauge. Oil pressure, oil temperature, there we go. It's in Fahrenheit, so again, units that I'm not hugely familiar with. That is warming up quite quickly. However, we've got a green arc, that's good enough for me. Right, radio master on, so here's that beautiful rolling map. As it's a 530, it's bigger than the some of the stock aircraft that have a 430, but everything else is the same. We've got an ident feature here for the nav. These are your nav frequencies. These are your comm frequencies. Everything else is on. Autopilot can stay on standby. That's really it. Boost pump can go off. Now it's started. Look around the outside. Beautiful. Okay. So what we're going to do now is we'll taxi up to the hold, and I will wait there momentarily while I compare the Bonanza and the Ovation for a takeoff, and then we'll come back to actually what it's like in the cruise. So I'll get this shut now because it's letting in the air, and of course we don't want to forget that, because if we accelerate over 132 knots your aircraft falls apart, which is not ideal. So this is good. Obviously I'm going to disregard air traffic now. In fact, I'm going to just detune that because I don't want them talking to me while I'm flying around. Park and brake off, and let's go for a little taxi around Inverness. Turns quite nicely without needing to use differential braking, so it looks like it's got quite a good link between the pedals and our nose wheel. Just going to check what the wind's doing. Looks like it's 2-3 in use here, so we'll taxi down this way. So what have we got instrument-wise? Well, obviously all analog stuff. Attitude indicator comes with a flight director, so if you are flying it on the autopilot, or you don't want to fly it on the autopilot but manually and you want a bit of extra help, you can enable the flight director, which is on the panel down here. Then you've also got a HSI, which looks like it doesn't need any sort of aligning, so it will have some sort of magnetometer attached to that, so it never needs to be checked against the compass. It will always be pointing to the correct magnetic north. And then the rest of them, I'm sure you're familiar with, the usual analog instruments that you expect to see in a analog equipped aircraft. So this is quite often the inactive runway at Inverness, so I'm just going to taxi down it and get to the hold down there. Maybe get some lights on in the cockpit. I've just noticed it's even got compass dip and inaccuracies when we're manoeuvring, which is fantastic. That's a level of detail that you don't always expect. Might just be something Carenado associated. I'm going to be honest with you, I don't actually know if it's on the stock aircraft. I'll have to test that at some point. While I'm taxiing, we'll use takeoff flap on here. So one stage, the flap selector's down there, and your indicators here. And of course, we've got our trim indications here as well. So elevator trim, just moving it on my controls there, that's set to the neutral. And rudder trim, there's a takeoff band here, so it looks like it needs quite a bit of right rudder, because essentially it's a powerful engine. It's probably going to yaw you to the left on takeoff anyway. Having got quite used to flying this thing, I'm going to leave it at the left-hand edge of the takeoff band of rudder trim, just because it actually seems to be a bit too much. Just over on the right hand side there as well, something I didn't cover is you've got a set of cylinder head temperatures, I believe, and possibly EGT for each cylinder. So you can see why it's got 6 bars there. I think it's CHT it's set to at the moment. Quite a useful tool. I mean, it's possibly just for maintenance reasons and engine health. I certainly would be using things like the EGT and possibly the average CHT up here if I'm leaning out the mixture. But otherwise, that seems to be just a bonus. You can see which of the cylinders is running the hottest. Usually the ones at the rear. I don't know which numbers they are, but obviously you've got 3 on each side. It's a horizontally opposed engine, so it's usually the ones at the back that tend to run hotter on engines like this. Right, from this point on, I'm going to jump cut now to our little test on the climb performance and cruise performance of the Ovation versus the Bonanza. Now, just to outline it, I'm using exactly the same passenger loads and the same fuel weight in both aircraft, but obviously, as mentioned before, that the net result of that is the Bonanza is still quite a bit heavier, about 310 pounds heavier. We are going to rotate around the 70 mark, climb initially about 80-85, get the gear up as soon as we're off the runway. At about 300 feet, going to retract the approach flap, and then we'll climb with the best climb speed for both aircraft, which is around the 100 knots mark. There's about 5 knots between them. The Bonanza's about 100, and the Ovation ideally is about 105 rate of climb. We'll get to 3,000 feet, we'll level off, let them accelerate, and we will then see, first of all, what time it takes to get to 3,000 feet, and then also how long it takes to get to certain speeds and how fast they can cruise out. You'll see the significant difference, and it might just be because the model is more detailed than the stock model of the Bonanza, but you'll see the significant difference. The Ovation has a serious edge over the Bonanza. In terms of real-world flying procedures, I'm not going to adjust the propeller RPM on the aircraft. Now, usually what you do is about 300-400 feet, you reduce the RPM to give you a more sustainable RPM setting on the engine. It's less wear and tear, and it reduces the load. However, we're in a simulator here, and to keep the test standard, they're going to both stay at maximum RPM all the way up until we've accelerated up to the cruise, so that they're both achieving as much power as they possibly could. That should keep the test pretty standard and in the same environment. Obviously, same airport, same runway, weather's the same, and as you've probably noticed, one's got the G1000 on the Bonanza and PFD, MFD, and the Mooney Ovation has analog cages. trying to take an average here. Looks like the Ovation has got at least 600 feet per minute climb over the Bonanza. Now we wait for the next part, which is going to be who can get to 3,000 feet first. Still only 900 feet to go in the Bonanza. The Ovation has already reached 3,000 feet, and within a matter of moments it's about to pass through 140 knots as well, so it's really accelerating quite strongly now.
Inverness Tower Beechcraft Golf, Foxtrot, Foxtrot, Hotel Juliet, frequency change.
Once I can get the air traffic out of the way, there's 140 knots already. By this point now, the Ovation seems to be quite stable, about 165 knots it'll leisurely cruise at. So that's pretty much the test over for the Ovation. Now we just got to wait for the Bonanza to catch up. And while I was talking there, the Bonanza has reached 3,000 feet, about 50 seconds behind the Ovation. Now we just got to wait for 140 knots and see what it stabilises at in the cruise. In your own time. Wow, nearly a minute and 20 behind the Ovation to reach 140 knots. And it's not climbing very rapidly here, so I don't know what else we'll get out of it. It might not even make 150, but let's just wait and see how fast we can get up to. Yeah, that looks like about it now, doesn't it? It's just floating around the 148, 149 mark. And of course we're going to have to bring the propeller back now, so it's not working too hard. So we'll go with 145 is about it, all you're going to get out of there now. And as you can see, the Ovation has made an absolute killing on all of these areas that we've measured today. Bit of a no-brainer if you ask me, performance-wise. Right, hopefully you enjoyed that. So let's get back to our departure on here. So we're just going to follow what we did on the test as well, climbing up to 3,000 feet. Runway heading is going to be 23, I believe. Good question. Is where I've forgotten everything about... oh no, it is 23. There we go. So we're going to depart on this runway 23. I did remember that, so let's select the heading as 23. Now I think there's some features on this autopilot. It's all working, but it is a bit funky in places, so we'll go over that when we're actually into the cruise. I won't use it for the initial part. So I'm going to line up here. I'll stick all my lights on now. Beacon, strobes, taxi and landing lights. Alright, there we go. Probably a bit overzealous on the power there to get us rolling, but it doesn't matter. So we're going to backtrack 2-3. Jump cut. So the wind is off from the left in this scenario. So just in terms of what I've gleaned from the pilot operating handbook, we're going to rotate about 66 knots, probably 70 is the closest I'm going to manage on that. We'll climb initially at 75, and then we will get the gear up once there's no runway remaining. We'll then clean up at about 300 feet, so removing the flap then as well, and we're going to climb at about 105, which is our best rate of climb speed. And then we'll see what we can get in terms of a cruise speed out of this at 3,000 feet, give the autopilot a little play, and I'll give you my final verdicts on this aircraft. Right, so we'll get this straight. Straighten up a little bit, hold it on the brakes, check everything's correct. Oil temperature's just coming into the green now, oil pressure's good, everything else is good. We're on runway heading, which is 230, both of them agree on 230. Let's apply a bit of power, maybe about 17, 18 inches. This is going to be your power gauge here, the RPM's now coming up. Release the brakes and full power. Bit of left aileron for the wind. It is quite windy here. There we go. Speed just jumped up on me. Already you can see that it's climbing quite well. So that's good enough for the gear. Gear's going up. Okay, I'm going to start accelerating now after 300 feet. And flaps going away. Fantastic rate of climb here from a single engine aircraft. Obviously the wind might be helping us a little bit because it does depend quite a lot on that as well. I'm just going to sort that trim out because even that takeoff setting on the rudder trim, as you can see, has pushed the ball out to the right. There we go. So I promised you 105 knot climb and I'm not doing it. Here we go. So we're still climbing at over 1,500 feet per minute. Now I can pitch up slightly to preserve that 105 knots, and it's almost pegged the rate of climb vertical speed indicator there, at just on the 2,000 foot per minute mark. So it is climbing quite well. So already at 2,500 feet, not long to go to 3. We're heading inland from Inverness, so on a southwesterly direction. If we carried on in this direction, we possibly actually see... Not sure what happened to my instruments there. We'll actually see Loch Ness, which is ahead of me there. So there's 3,000 feet. I'm going to level off there, so lowering the nose. RPM brake as well. Should be coming back to about 2,500 RPM after about 300 feet as well, guys. Depends how much realism you want there. It's not going to affect a simulated aircraft. And already we are surpassing 150 knots. There's 160. Try not to put it into a dive. And should probably power back at this point. About 23 inches should be sufficient to get a nice cruise speed, and as you can see, this thing is bombing along. So, great climb, great cruise speed. Now let's have a play with some of these systems. So, let's put the autopilot on. Let's give it an out-hold mode. It should be set to 3,000 feet. And put it into a heading mode. There we go. So even at 23 inches, which is quite a low power setting, we've got just under 2,300 RPM, which is a good cruise setting. We're still quite stable at about 165 nearly knots. Fantastic cruise speed on this thing. There we go. Now, what have we got on the autopilot? We've got nav hold, approach hold, back course. Don't know what that magical button is. We don't use that in the UK or Europe, really. It's an American thing. Not sure about these pitch controls here, because normally the down toggle should be up here. So I'm not sure if this is a design of the aircraft. But of course, if you push the down button, you're expecting the nose to go basically nose down in a similar movement. So you push the controls forward, the nose will go down. So you push the top button, and the nose will go down. So I don't know why it's this way around, but I haven't managed to make it work very well. Oh, no, here we go, it is working. I've tried it on the climb out, and it was a bit janky. So, but it seems to be, there we go, 3 degrees, 4 degrees nose up, and then we could possibly set a capture altitude, 3,500 feet. So hopefully, will it capture then when we reach 3,500? That's the question. I suspect not. It doesn't seem to have a capture mode on it, so I think what we have to do is when we reach 3,500, either manually level off and then hit the Alt hold button, or just press it. Of course, then the people's G&Ts in the back are just going to fall out of their glasses as the aircraft noses over quite violently. Yeah, it doesn't look like it's going to do it, does it? So, 3.5, there we go. Sorry guys. Right. Well, there it is. It's cruising nicely. Here's Loch Ness, look. Fantastic part of the world to be doing this demonstration in. I suppose I can get rid of some lights now we've left the field. Let's get rid of our taxi and landing lights. Open the vents for the guys in the back. You're welcome. Autopilot seems to be flying quite nicely. Obviously, if you're used to our channel, this is cheating. This should be removed instantly. But of course, as part of this review, I'm trying to demonstrate every part of the aircraft to you guys. I think we've covered most of the areas now. You can see the cylinder head temperatures there. EGT, I think we've got a toggle on here somewhere as well. What's this doing here? Absolutely no idea. I'm just pressing buttons for the sake of it. I think this might be a high and a low, maybe? I don't know. Answers on a postcard, guys. I have absolutely no idea. There's one other trick up this aircraft's sleeve, and that is it has speed brakes. See that little bit there? That is in fact a speed brake. Now, how do you toggle that? Well, there's a button just over here somewhere. Where is it? Just going to keep my trip. Just move my camera a little bit, because I think it says right switches for it. Can I do it on my keyboard? Here we go. There it is. You can press it there and this will come up. Let's just try that. Let's be really low. Look at that. Now I've actually got a button tied to my... Oh, it's quite effective as well. I've got a button tied to my controls, so if I look out the side there and watch it, I love the way this tucks in. It's like sticking your hand. We could probably get a better effect sticking our hand out the window. Don't do that. We're too fast. Learn from my mistakes. And of course there's one on the other side as well. Let me reset my view. You see the other one? It's there, I promise you. Look at it. It's so cute. And it seems to make quite a difference. So that helps you get down quickly. We're approaching some clouds now. But really, what's my verdict on this then? Well, it's great in its own way. It's fantastically fast for a single engine. It's probably one of the faster ones. Certainly I think it's even faster than the Cirrus, but don't quote me on that. So if you're doing some nice VFR navigation, possibly even IFR, this will work nicely for you. Of course it's not as pretty as the Garmin 1000s, but it's for the more manual flyers among us who like a good aircraft with a nice arrangement of instruments to fly manually with. I would honestly recommend this aircraft. If you're a GA flyer and you want something quick, definitely get this aircraft. I would say it's wholly worth the £25 that they're asking for it on the store. It's beautifully detailed. Can I open the door in flight? I can. Now I'm probably going to crash. There we go. So in summary, it's beautifully detailed, and honestly it would be a great addition to your hangar if you are, like myself, quite a fan of the GA kind. And we can open the window in flight. And the door, so you know, there's that as well. As always, I hope you've enjoyed the video. Please again do like and subscribe our channel, and please leave any comments for anything you want to see in the future, and thanks for watching.